Hello, this is Jeff Byers, and just want to take you through a tool that will help you with cleaning up your low poly before you start adding edge loops. Now, some of you have had some issues already, even though we've discussed that we really don't want to see triangles in your mesh. So I have a older student file that I'd like to take you through, kind of help you with how to, if you run into these issues, how do you fix them? Number one. Number two is you never want to have triangles, especially if you're trying to add edge loops. You know the corners of the crate, you know how hard that was to fix? Well, this is the same thing. With these, you shouldn't have any issues with triangles. You should not want triangles in your low poly object until you duplicate it and bring in the low poly, duplicate it and add and triangulate the low poly to get it into Substance Painter for baking. That's the only reason why we triangulate that. When we come back to Maya, we don't want to use the triangulated version when we apply it to the textures onto the object. So we just triangulate it to get it into Substance Painter so it doesn't have any errors when it's baking. So the idea is no triangles if you can get away with it. Alright? Now in gaming, it seems contradictory to what game models need. Game models have to be triangulated before they go into the game engine. Okay? That is something totally different than the adding edge loops and modeling. Now, normally if we didn't want to add detail and we didn't want to do high poly and we just did low poly, then having triangles in the mesh is fine. But if you know you're going to have to add edge loops, you know you're going to have to smooth the object, you don't want triangles. Okay, so just kind of making that clear. So what we want to do is, how do you tell if you have n-gons, which is a polygon that's less than 4 sides? Okay, that's not considered an n-gon. Anything more than 4 sides, but a triangle, if we're looking for triangles, how do we find those? Okay, so what you want to do is you want to make sure in your object mode, first of all, you want to kind of pinpoint which is the problem area. So I'm going to select all of them. Do it all at once. Okay, and there's a tool called Cleanup. Alright, so we're going to go hold down the space bar, go to Mesh, and we're going to go to Cleanup, and we're going to go into the option box. Okay, so we don't want Maya to clean it up itself. We don't want Maya to do that because it's just going to triangulate everything. Okay, it doesn't know we're trying to add edge loops and do all this extra work to get a high poly. Okay, so it doesn't know that. It's just going to just do it crazy, haphazardly, and put triangles wherever it wants. So we're going to turn and click on Select Matching Polygons. So it's going to find those polygons and highlight them for us. Okay, apply to selected object, yes. Keep construction history, sure. We don't want to look for 4-sided faces just yet. We want to look for faces with more than 4 sides. Okay, so you click on that. And the rest of this is a lot more advanced. What we're going to do is we're not going to click on that because I want to keep you focused on just one thing, finding n-gons. Okay? Alright. So n-gons will keep you from adding edge loops. Triangles will keep you from adding edge loops. If you have a triangle somewhere, it will stop that edge loop in its tracks. Okay? Alright, so let's go ahead and click on Cleanup. Alright, so now it's highlighted everything. This is just, I love this this tool because it will find all of your bad modeling and show you what you've done wrong and show you exactly what areas. And a lot of times I'll just go in here and hit the 4 key and check it out and see what you got. Okay. And that's how I check your models for n-gons and stuff. Or that's exactly the same way as if you send your model to me, and this is the first thing I do is I just kind of check for n-gons. Okay, so those are all the n-gons. Okay, so how do you fix them? Well, you can do one or two things. So let's go in here and hit the 5 key, you've got to either delete those areas or find out what you did to cause that end-gon. Okay? There could be many things in here related. Okay? Now, as we get better at modeling, we're going to see less and less of these issues. It's just basically experience. So what you're going to have to do is just going to have to go back and find out why you have 5-sided or 6-sided or polygon. Well, in this one here, you can see that we have an edge loop that goes up to here and then just stops and doesn't continue. That means that that edge loop has not gone all the way through. That's a problem. To fix that, you'd have to go in there and use the cut faces tool, cut all the way around there. But the faster way to fix these areas is to just delete the face and redo it. Okay? Delete the edge that doesn't go all the way across will also keep it from happening. Okay? So if you run into this issue, you have to go into your edge mode and double click on that edge and get rid of it. That's what's causing the problem. It doesn't go all the way across. Don't add an edge that doesn't go all the way across, okay, until you fix the problem. What's your problem here? What is causing this to do this? Okay? So you have to go in there and you have to go, well, it's causing a lot more problems because now you've got an edge going all the way here, and if we select this, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have a 5-sided polygon here. Okay? So this edge caused a lot of problems, adding this edge and just leaving it there. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the control. That's important because control will delete all the vertices, and then I'm going to hit delete. Okay? I see a lot of you guys, and I'm not saying this class, I'm just saying a lot of guys will just hit the delete key, a lot of students. But the problem with that is, if I go to vertex mode, it left all those vertices there. And that's a real problem, because then you don't see them when you're like this. Well, I don't have a problem issue. That will sneak back up on you and cause a problem. So you must go back. Let's go Control Z back. And I'm going to select that edge again. Okay. And the first rule of thumb, don't have triangles in your mesh. Have all quads. Okay. Good topology. We've talked about that a million times, and I think we've talked about triangles. You don't want them. I'm not saying you can't put them in. We had them in the crate, but I had to work really hard to get those edge loops to work properly. We all went through that, so you know how hard it is if you have triangles in your mesh. So try to stay away from them. Okay. So now I'm going to hold the control and delete. There we go. And then I'm going to go in here and find that one, control delete, and now I'm going to find out what is the problem. So now you got to go back to your low poly. There's a certain point where if you get stuck with something, you might want to go back to your low poly, fix that, and add the edge loops again. Try adding the edge loops again. Believe me, you'll start finding those issues. And it's a lot easier than for me to grab your model and go, okay, now you got these edge loops, now you got all these problems. Well, we need to find those problems in the low poly first. Okay, those issues in the low poly first. So, it's up to us as artists to kind of try to problem solve our own geometry. Okay. There's only so much I can do. You can see that this is exactly what I do. Now, to find and fix my own geometry, right? So if you're running into issues, you might have to go back to your low poly if you've got some really real bad issues. A lot of the issues can be double faces on top of each other. How do you check for that? Well, you can go on a face, you can select it and delete it. If it goes all the way through, you know it's not double faced. I'm going to go Control Z. Now, you don't want to go too far with that. Just on areas that you know there's a problem. Another thing is double vertices. Okay, so that's the first thing I check, is if you have double faces, and then I check if you have double vertices. So I go in here and I find this area that you've got problems with. Okay. Now I see another issue. I see a edge right here that doesn't go all the way through. Again, you've got to make sure that if it stops, there's a reason why it stopped. There's a problem with the mesh, and you've got to go through and fix it before you can go any farther. Okay. All right. So this has always been an issue with students, especially when you're learning how to model, and that's, I foresee this, but it's one of those things that you just got to problem solve it out. And one of the issues is double faces and double vertices on some of these pieces. And a lot of times I'll just go in here with a piece. Let's say this is the piece we need to work on. And I'll do a control 1, and that will hide everything else except for that mesh, so I can just work on this. So I can hit the F key like that, and I can go in here and just kind of work on this piece. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is find out, okay, is it double vertices? All right. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to go to Windows, and I'm going to go to Display. Go to Heads Up Display, and go to Polygon Count. Okay, this tells me all the poly count. This is the vertices, 2205. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge. Okay, now I've got to be really careful. I do not want to cause any more problems, so I'm going to go to a spot where there's vertices really close to each other. Okay, like right here. And here's the triangle. That's the no-no. There's triangles all through here. Okay, so we got to be super careful with how we model. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go into Edit Mesh, and I'm going to go to Merge. Okay, and I'm going to add a 0 to this, so 0 and then 1. So I've got a 0.001. So that means that's going to be a small area. What it's going to do, it's going to, if there are vertices on top of each other that you can't see, it's going to weld them together. Okay, so I'm going to click on Merge. Okay, you can see that we had double vertices. Okay, alright, so let's go Control Z back. We had 22. Let's go Shift Z back forward. Now it's 19. So over 200 vertices were eliminated here. That's a telling sign there. Okay, we've got a lot of some modeling that needs to be corrected for sure. Now we're looking for triangles, and that's another wicked little thing that when you're trying to do edge loops, do not have triangles again. Really watch that. So how do we look for triangles? If you don't see them, I mean I see them right here. So what do we do with those? Okay, all right. So those are harder to fix, and you might have to remodel some stuff. But mesh. Let's go to Clean Up, and now we're going to click off of this and click on four-sided faces. Now what's going to happen is we're kind of inverting it, the selection process. So it was looking for polygons that are more than four sides. That's a quadrangle. Now it's going to look for triangles. Okay, so it's not really looking for them. It's going to tell us it's a four-sided face, but anything that's not highlighted will be that dreaded triangle. Click on Clean Up. Okay, so we got some triangles here. We got some spots there for some reason. That's a real bad area there. So I don't see any triangles there, but it's not a quadrangle, so that's a bad thing. So you're almost better off deleting all this area here, getting rid of the edge loops, and remodeling that so we don't have any of those issues that we see. For some reason, it's not seeing this as a triangle because it's got a quad cut right here and it's stopped. Okay, so let's try. This is going to be very difficult. This little piece has caused a lot of issues for this. Okay, that little piece. Okay, which is just basically a cube that's been pulled out, or should be fairly easy to fix, but it's not. So we might have to fix this. I'd have to go down to the low poly, to the lowest low poly without the edge loops, and fix this. Delete it, fix it. This here is a mess. I'm not sure what's happened here, but that already tells me there's such a big problem here. We need to get rid of it. Okay, so delete it. There we go. Alright. Okay, so now you can kind of see some of the issues we have with that. It's a one-sided face. Okay, so that's kind of a problem. So what we can do with this particular example, I'll probably go in here and take this edge and extrude it over. Okay, just to fix this. So I'm going to extrude that over, so I'm going to go Control E. Okay, and I can probably go in here and do a W and just move it over. Okay, now I'm going to move it over to that cut right here, to that break right there. Okay, let's move it over that way. Now it's flowing the wrong way. It's like reversed, so I got to fix that too. So I'll show you how to do that real quick. So Control E again, hit the W key, and move it over to the next spot. That guy right there. You can see you can line it up with that edge right there. Okay, you can't fill hole with this. It's too complicated. All right. And then once I'm done with that, I do a Control E again, hit the W key, and move it over, and just kind of get that as close as possible. Now what I do, okay, is I want to merge all those vertices because they're not connected. Nothing's connected. So I'm going to go in here and go to vertex mode. I'm just going to marquee select that one little spot. You can see there's one there, so I don't have to weld that. Hit the Q key. I'm going to marquee select that little guy right there. That shows that there's two. That's fine. That's what I expect. So I'm going to go to Edit Mesh and Merge to Center. Okay, there we go. That fixes that. Then I'm going to marquee select that, and that is 2. I'm going to hit the G key to get that reinvokes what I just did to merge to center. Notice that I can see the 1 up there. And then at the very end here, I got that same problem. Hit the G key. I'm merging. I'm going to hit the G key, merge that. Then I've got to go down here. I'm going to marquee select that. We have 1 there. And marquee select that. We have 2. I'm going to hit the G key. That's basically merge to center. And I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Merge to center. And this one, merge to center. There we go. So now we have a new polygon right here. Okay. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to face mode. Okay. And hold the shift key down to select those polygons that are black. Okay, and then you hold down the spacebar once you have those selected. Let's do that again. Go to mesh display, and then you can go to reverse. Okay, now make sure you don't have anything else selected, and that should reverse those faces. Now that should be clean. That should be clean geometry now. Okay, so that's basically what we're looking for. Alright, so that should be taken care of on that part of it. Again, if an edge loop doesn't go all the way around, you need to check and clean up. Okay. Now, we still have time to get everything cleaned up, but unfortunately I'm not going to be able to show you on here. There's too many edge loops on here. That's why it's important to save your low poly. But what I probably would have done with the low poly is just taken that cube and just extruded it out. I'm not exactly sure where all these triangles came from. So if things aren't working, you can also cut. So let me give you an example with what I mean by that. So let's go ahead and go in here. And I'm going to do a new scene real quick and kind of give you an idea what you can do. So click on this cube. Alright, so you have this cube, and a lot of students don't realize the way to extrude, it's not just from the face. There's a way of doing it that's a lot better. So let's say we have this cube. Okay, let me show you 2 different ways to get the same thing. So I'm going to duplicate. So Control D, move that over. So there we go. So we got 2 cubes. One's going to be, I'm going to add detail this way. Okay. Now, if I am extruding like this, I have to be super careful. Okay, so if I extrude, I go Control E, right? And the first thing we do is we just scale that down. Okay, there we go. And then we're going to make that, then we're going to do a Control E and just hit the W key and move that out. So there's our detail. Here's another way. This is what I would recommend to do, because what's happening with this, it's not that this is wrong, and it's still quads, but the topology is so poor that what happens when you do an edge loop with this, okay, it gets a little confused on what to do. Okay, 9 times out of 10 you're going to run into issues where it just won't work. It's not doing what you want it to do. Okay, the better result that you're going to get is this. So I'm going to do the same exact thing with this guy. Okay, so instead I add insert edge loop on the low poly first, like this, and like this, and like this, and like this. Okay, and then I go in here to face mode and extrude it. Okay, so Control E, hit the W key, and we get the same exact thing. But now I can control the edge loops so much better with that, and I can still do crazy stuff with this. I can take that face, okay, I can scale that down, I can move it, I can scale it out like that if I wanted to or whatever, and even move it over to the side and still do all the things that I want to do with this. Okay, alright, so I can even move these vertices over if I want to. So if I want to slide these vertices over, just move those. I'm going to get those selected and just move those over. Okay, slide those over a little bit, kind of give it some more depth and stuff or whatever. We can still do that. Okay, now the problem with this, I think I need to reset my tool. So to reset a tool, if they're kind of cockeyed, see that how the axis is cockeyed a little bit. I'm going to double click on that. Just reset the tool. There we go. That's much better. So no matter what you do here, it's still going to work just fine. Now, normally, if you're going to move that edge, you probably want to move the entire edge. Okay? It really depends on what your application and what you're trying to do. Okay. So, alright, so now I'm going to go in here and add edge loops. Alright, so with this, I'm going to go ahead and add an edge loop. I can add an edge loop here. And we're going to keep those corners now. We can still keep the corners. And we can still add these corners here, and it will follow that topology of that object. Okay? Much better than what we had before. Okay? And you can see that our edge loops are working much better. It's not confused. We can do outside and inside edge loops, and that's the key. Okay, so between the two you can see the real difference here. So extruding from the face instead of creating that detail with edge loops first is a huge difference. Okay, alright, just to kind of reiterate the differences between the two. Okay, you're gonna have a lot less issues. So if you are running into an issue with trying to create edge loops and you've created the details this way, you might want to look at creating the details this way by adding edge loops and then extruding out from that point that you want. And that's the same thing with doing indents too as well. Okay, so I can continue adding detail to this cube, going to selection mode, insert edge loop tool, and adding edge loops here and here and here and here. And if I want to do indents here, I can. So now I just select these two guys here. Okay, instead of going to the face and trying to do it that way. Again, you know, it's problematic at best, because then you have to select that and then divide this up again. You'd have to divide this up anyway to get those two pieces that I have here. So that's really not going to work. So I'd have to divide this up and then extrude in from that. So let me give you an example of what I mean. Alright, so to even do this correctly, I'd have to go in here and add those edge loops anyway, like that. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to go click on the face for the entire face and then do a Control E, because that gives us the same problems we had before. Okay, we have those angled lines which just cannot be worked with. Okay, same thing with this. You see, it just won't work. No matter what we do to this, it will just mess up, and you will just get, that's just bad geometry, even though they're quads. All of these are quads. We don't have any triangles. But it's going to stop us from doing edge loops because of this corner. Okay, this is much cleaner. So if I go in here, okay, now I can go in there and do Control E, and I can move that back with the manipulator, or I can hit the W key and just move it back that way. Now I have that selected. I don't know why. We try this again. Alright. Okay, click off, click on. Alright, so I'm going to go in here and Control E and hit the W key and just move that back. And so those are my insert pieces. Now, that is a better way of modeling. Okay. And so if you plan on, and you know you're going to do edge loops, and sometimes I forget too. I'm just like you guys. I'll get in a hurry and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do extrude and scale it down first. And you probably even see me do it. Just letting you know, if you have run into issues, you might want to go back and redo those pieces. It doesn't mean you have to remodel everything. It just means that you have to go back to the low poly, and you can start by just deleting the whole entire face if you want to. Okay. Okay. If it's low enough poly, the problem is if you don't duplicate the low poly, you don't save it, then it's really hard to go back, and you probably will have to remodel, because trying to clean something that's got a bunch of edge loops in it anyway, I am forced to go in here as, you know, trying to clean it up to get rid of every one of these edge loops that you have, just to fix it. Okay? Alright? And that causes some problems. It makes it very difficult to try to fix it. So going back to your low poly, that's why I always tell you to save your low poly before you start adding edge loops. Okay? So if you go to your low poly and you have to delete something or a face, then it's easy to do. You can delete the face, and then you can go back in here, and there's a tool, a specialty tool called Append to Polygon tool. Now you can also use the Fill Hole tool, but the Append to Polygon tool gives you a little more flexibility. So I'm going to reset the tool, just move it out of the way, or I can even close it, and just click on one corner, and just follow the arrows. Okay, there we go, and hit enter. Now you shouldn't have any vertices that are rogue, meaning that you don't have double vertices. They should have been welded when you do the Append to Polygon tool. And so that fixes the face. And I already showed you if the face is reversed. If that happens, then you just select the face, and you go to, hold down your spacebar, go to mesh display, and go to reverse. Okay, alright. But we don't want to do that because it's fine. If it's black, that's the problem. Alright? So low polys will save your life. If you've been saving your low polys and you run into issues as you're doing edge loops, go back to and find out where those issues are. Go back to your low poly and model it with adding edge loops and then extruding it out, and that should give you a nicer look, a nicer model when you smooth it. Okay. All right. Okay. Again, call and email me anytime you guys have issues. Send me screenshots in your MB files. I'll look at them and do my best to help you. All right. Have a great week. Again, it was just brought up by a student, that helping a student, that I need to go through this, and maybe this will be helpful to you later too in modeling. If it didn't help you now, it might help you later when you're modeling and trying to figure out what happened. Okay. All right. Have a great week, and I look forward to seeing your guys' work, and I'll see you next week.